The dark art of interrogation. Imagine being trapped in a room with no way out, surrounded by stern-faced detectives who seem determined to break you. The air is thick with tension, and every word is laced with skepticism. You're told that the evidence is mounting against you, and the only way to clear your name is to confess. But is that really the truth? For decades, interrogation psychology has been the backbone of law enforcement, used to extract confessions from suspects and solve crimes. But what's often overlooked is the dark side of this technique, the manipulative tactics used to break innocent people. It's a game of cat and mouse, where the interrogator uses psychological manipulation and coercion to wear down the suspect's defenses. At the heart of this technique lies the Reid method, developed by John Reid in the 1940s. This widely used approach relies on creating a false sense of guilt and manipulating the suspect's emotions to elicit a confession. The Reid technique is built on the principle of minimization, the idea that the suspect's guilt is so overwhelming that they'll eventually crack under the pressure. But here's the thing, innocent people are more susceptible to false confessions due to their trusting nature and lack of knowledge about interrogation tactics. They're often unaware of their rights, and the interrogators know exactly how to exploit this vulnerability. The Reid technique is designed to create a false narrative, where the suspect is led to believe they're responsible for the crime, even when they're not. Take the case of Dennis Marr, a young man who was wrongly accused of murder in 2003. Marr had never been in trouble with the law before, but after a grueling 10-hour interrogation, he eventually confessed to a crime he didn't commit. The detectives used the Reid technique to wear him down, making him feel like he was the only one who knew the truth. Marr's confession was later proven to be false, but the damage had already been done. The Reid technique is just one example of the manipulative tactics used in interrogation psychology. Other methods include the good cop, bad cop routine, where one interrogator plays the role of the friendly, sympathetic listener, while the other plays the role of the tough, no-nonsense enforcer. This approach is designed to create a sense of conflict within the suspect, making them more likely to crack under the pressure. But what about the people who resist the Reid technique? Those who remain steadfast in their innocence, despite the relentless pressure? It's here that the interrogators use another tactic, the confession trap. This involves creating a false sense of security, where the suspect is led to believe they've already confessed or are on the verge of doing so. The interrogator then uses this perceived concession to break the suspect's spirit, making them more receptive to the false narrative. The Reid technique and the confession trap are just two examples of the manipulative tactics used in interrogation psychology. These methods are designed to break innocent people, to wear them down until they confess to a crime they didn't commit. But what about the people who are left behind? The ones who are damaged by the system, left with scars that never fully heal? As we delve deeper into the world of interrogation psychology, it becomes clear that the line between truth and fiction is often blurred. The Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are designed to create a false narrative, one that's fueled by coercion and psychological manipulation. But what about the people who resist this narrative? Those who remain steadfast in their innocence, despite the relentless pressure? The answer lies in understanding the psychology of interrogation, and the tactics used to break innocent people. It's a complex web of manipulation and coercion, designed to wear down the suspect's defenses. But it's also a story of resilience and hope, of people who resist the system, who refuse to be broken, and who fight for the truth. As we continue to explore this dark art, we'll uncover more stories of people who were broken by the system, and others who managed to resist its grasp. We'll examine the tactics used by interrogators, and the psychology behind these manipulative methods. And we'll ask the tough questions: what makes someone susceptible to false confessions? How can we protect innocent people from the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics? But for now, let's remember the words of Dennis Marr, the young man who was wrongly accused of murder. "I was just trying to survive," he said, reflecting on his ordeal. "I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I was in trouble." Marr's story is just one example of the dark art of interrogation, a game of cat and mouse where the stakes are high, and the consequences are devastating. The Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are a reminder that the truth is often complex, and that the line between reality and fiction is often blurred. But it's also a testament to the human spirit, a spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of overwhelming pressure. As we move forward in this story, we'll explore more examples of the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics. We'll examine the psychology behind these methods and the tactics used by interrogators to break innocent people. And we'll ask the tough questions: what makes someone susceptible to false confessions? How can we protect innocent people from the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics? But for now, let's leave you with a question. What would you do if you were trapped in a room with no way out, surrounded by stern-faced detectives who seemed determined to break you? Would you resist the Reid technique, or would you crack under the pressure? The answer lies within, a reflection of our own inner strength and resilience. The Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are a reminder that the truth is often complex, and that the line between reality and fiction is often blurred. But it's also a testament to the human spirit, a spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of overwhelming pressure. As we continue to explore this dark art, we'll uncover more stories of people who were broken by the system, and others who managed to resist its grasp. We'll examine the tactics used by interrogators, and the psychology behind these manipulative methods. And we'll ask the tough questions: what makes someone susceptible to false confessions? How can we protect innocent people from the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics? But for now, let's remember the words of Dennis Marr, the young man who was wrongly accused of murder. "I was just trying to survive," he said, reflecting on his ordeal. "I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I was in trouble." Marr's story is just one example of the dark art of interrogation, a game of cat and mouse where the stakes are high, and the consequences are devastating. The Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are a reminder that the truth is often complex, and that the line between reality and fiction is often blurred. But it's also a testament to the human spirit, a spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of overwhelming pressure. As we move forward in this story, we'll explore more examples of the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics. We'll examine the psychology behind these methods, and the tactics used by interrogators to break innocent people. And we'll ask the tough questions: what makes someone susceptible to false confessions? How can we protect innocent people from the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics? But for now, let's leave you with a question. What would you do if you were trapped in a room with no way out, surrounded by stern-faced detectives who seemed determined to break you? Would you resist the Reid technique, or would you crack under the pressure? The answer lies within, a reflection of our own inner strength and resilience. The Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are a reminder that the truth is often complex, and that the line between reality and fiction is often blurred. But it's also a testament to the human spirit, a spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of overwhelming pressure. As we continue to explore this dark art, we'll uncover more stories of people who were broken by the system, and others who managed to resist its grasp. We'll examine the tactics used by interrogators, and the psychology behind these manipulative methods. And we'll ask the tough questions: what makes someone susceptible to false confessions? How can we protect innocent people from the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics? As we delve deeper into the world of interrogation psychology, it becomes clear that the Reid technique and other manipulative tactics are just the tip of the iceberg. There's a much larger issue at play, one that involves the psychology of interrogation, the tactics used to break innocent people, and the consequences of these actions. The psychology of false confessions: imagine being convinced that you've committed a crime, even though you know it's not true. This is what happens when innocent people internalize false information or are coerced into believing they're responsible for something they didn't do. It's a phenomenon that's been studied extensively in the field of interrogation psychology, and it's more common than you might think. One of the most famous experiments in this field is the Milgram study. Conducted in the 1960s, it demonstrated how ordinary people can be persuaded to commit acts of cruelty when given instructions by an authority figure. The experiment involved a group of participants who were asked to administer electric shocks to another person every time they answered a question incorrectly. Unbeknownst to the participants, the person receiving the shocks was actually an actor, and the shocks were fake. The results of the study were shocking. Many of the participants continued to administer the shocks even when they were instructed to stop, and some even increased the intensity of the shocks as the experiment progressed. This shows just how easily people can be swayed by authority figures, even when their actions go against their better judgment. This phenomenon is often referred to as the Milgram effect. It's a powerful example of how people can be coerced into doing things they wouldn't normally do, simply because they're told to by someone in a position of authority. And it's not just limited to extreme cases like the Milgram study. In real-life interrogations, the Milgram effect can play out in subtle but insidious ways. For example, a detective might use persuasive language to convince a suspect that they're guilty, or they might use coercive tactics like sleep deprivation or isolation to break down the suspect's defenses. And once a suspect begins to doubt their own innocence, it can be incredibly difficult to reverse the process. The power of suggestion is a key factor in false confessions. When a suspect is presented with false information or is convinced that they're guilty, it can be incredibly difficult to resist the idea that they're responsible for the crime. And once they start to internalize this information, it can be incredibly hard to shake off the feeling that they've committed a crime, even if they know deep down that they're innocent. This is why it's so crucial to investigate false confessions and to understand the psychological mechanisms that lead to them. By studying these phenomena, we can gain a deeper understanding of how innocent people can be convinced to confess to crimes they didn't commit. And we can use this knowledge to develop more effective strategies for preventing false confessions and protecting the rights of suspects. One of the most compelling examples of the power of suggestion is the case of the Central Park Five. In 1989, a group of 5 Black and Latino teenagers were wrongly accused of raping a white woman in Central Park. During the interrogation, the police used coercive tactics to extract confessions from the suspects, including sleep deprivation, isolation, and physical abuse. The confessions that were obtained were riddled with inaccuracies and contradictions, but they were enough to secure the convictions of the 5 men. However, in 2002, the real perpetrator, Matias Reyes, came forward and confessed to the crime. His DNA matched the evidence at the crime scene, and the convictions of the Central Park Five were finally overturned in 2002. The Central Park Five case is a chilling example of how the power of suggestion can lead to false confessions. The police used coercive tactics to extract confessions from the suspects, and the suspects were convinced that they were guilty, even though they knew they weren't. This is a classic example of the Milgram effect, where ordinary people are persuaded to do something that goes against their better judgment simply because they're told to by someone in a position of authority. The Central Park Five case also highlights the importance of understanding the psychological mechanisms that lead to false confessions. By studying this case and others like it, we can gain a deeper understanding of how innocent people can be convinced to confess to crimes they didn't commit. And we can use this knowledge to develop more effective strategies for preventing false confessions and protecting the rights of suspects. In conclusion, false confessions are a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that can have devastating consequences for innocent people. By understanding the psychological mechanisms that lead to false confessions, we can develop more effective strategies for preventing them and protecting the rights of suspects. It's a crucial area of research that has the potential to save lives and prevent miscarriages of justice. As we continue to explore the psychology of false confessions, we'll be looking at more examples of how innocent people can be convinced to confess to crimes they didn't commit. We'll be examining the role of coercive tactics, the power of suggestion, and the importance of understanding the psychological mechanisms that lead to false confessions. And we'll be exploring ways to prevent false confessions and protect the rights of suspects. Join us next time as we dive deeper into the psychology of false confessions and explore the complexities of this fascinating field. When we think of interrogation, we often imagine a straightforward process of questioning a suspect until they crack. But, in reality, interrogation is a complex and nuanced art that relies heavily on psychological manipulation. In this section, we'll delve into the often overlooked techniques used by interrogators to break innocent people. One of the most insidious tactics used by interrogators is mirroring. Have you ever noticed how some salespeople seem to mirror your body language, mannerisms, and speech patterns? This isn't just a coincidence, it's a deliberate technique used to create a false sense of rapport and build trust. Interrogators use mirroring to make the suspect feel more at ease, almost as if they're talking to an old friend. Imagine being in a conversation with someone who mirrors your every move, from nodding to leaning forward. It can be unnerving, but it's also incredibly effective.
Studies have shown that when we feel a sense of rapport with someone, we're more likely to open up and share information.
It's a phenomenon known as social proof, where we tend to trust people who seem to understand and validate our thoughts and feelings.
But, here's the thing, rapport is a two-way street. When interrogators use mirroring to create a false sense of connection, they're not just trying to build trust, they're also trying to manipulate the suspect into confessing. By making the suspect feel understood and validated, the interrogator can create a sense of emotional vulnerability. This is when the suspect becomes more susceptible to psychological manipulation, often leading to a false confession. Empathy is another powerful tool used by interrogators.
We've all experienced situations where someone has listened to us intently, made us feel heard, and validated our emotions. Empathy is a natural human response that helps us feel connected to others. But, in the context of interrogation, empathy is often used as a tactic to break down the suspect's defenses. Imagine being in a situation where you're accused of a crime you didn't commit. The interrogator listens attentively to your side of the story, nodding sympathetically and making supportive noises.
They might even share a personal anecdote or two to build a sense of connection. It's a clever tactic, but it's also incredibly manipulative.
By creating a false sense of rapport and empathy, interrogators can make the suspect feel more comfortable sharing information.
But, here's the catch, this information is often false or coerced.
The suspect might confess to something they didn't do, simply because they feel a sense of trust and connection with the interrogator. The consequences of this technique can be devastating. Innocent people are being broken down and coerced into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. It's a dark chapter in the history of law enforcement, but it's also a reality that we must confront.
So, what can we do to prevent this kind of manipulation?
One solution is to educate ourselves about the tactics used by interrogators. By understanding the psychology behind these techniques, we can become more skeptical and critical of the information we're given.
Another solution is to promote transparency and accountability within law enforcement agencies.
By shining a light on these dark practices, we can create a culture of trust and openness that serves justice, not just the interests of those in power.
As we move forward, it's essential to recognize the complexities of interrogation psychology.
By understanding the tactics used by interrogators, we can create a more just and equitable society where innocent people are protected from manipulation and coercion.
But, for now, let's ask ourselves, what would you do if you were in a situation where you were accused of a crime you didn't commit? Would you be able to resist the tactics used by interrogators, or would you be broken down by the pressure and manipulation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation in the next section.
In the next section, we'll explore the role of suggestibility in interrogation, and how it can lead to false confessions.
Stay tuned.
Imagine being locked in a small room with no windows, no phone, and no way to communicate with the outside world. You've been brought in for questioning, and the interrogator is determined to get you to crack.
But what if I told you that this isn't just a scene from a movie? This is a real-life scenario that countless innocent people have faced, and it's all part of a sinister strategy to break down their mental defenses.
Isolation and deprivation are powerful tools in the hands of skilled interrogators. By cutting off a person's access to the outside world, they create a sense of disconnection and disorientation. It's like being lost in a desert with no map, no compass, and no water. Your sense of identity and self starts to blur, and you become increasingly dependent on your interrogators for survival. Sleep deprivation, in particular, is a clever trick that interrogators use to impair cognitive function and increase suggestibility. When we're tired, our brains start to slow down, and our judgment becomes clouded. We become more prone to making mistakes and more receptive to false information. It's like being in a dream state, where the boundaries between reality and fantasy start to blur.
And that's exactly what interrogators are counting on.
Take the case of Amanda Knox, the American exchange student who was accused of murdering her roommate in Italy.
During the interrogation, Amanda was subjected to 48 hours of sleep deprivation, constant questioning, and psychological manipulation.
She was told that she was a suspect, that she was guilty, and that she was going to prison. The interrogators used every trick in the book to break her down, from isolation to emotional manipulation.
But here's the thing, Amanda was innocent.
She had nothing to do with the murder, and yet she was convinced that she was responsible. She made false confessions, admitted to crimes she didn't commit, and even implicated her own friends and family. It was a classic case of false confessions, where the innocent person internalizes the false information and becomes convinced that they're guilty. Isolation and deprivation can have a profound impact on our mental state.
When we're cut off from the outside world, we start to lose our sense of identity and self.
We become more dependent on our interrogators, more susceptible to their suggestions, and more prone to making mistakes. It's like being in a never-ending nightmare, where the boundaries between reality and fantasy start to blur.
And yet, despite the obvious risks, interrogators continue to use isolation and deprivation as a tactic.
They justify it by saying that it's necessary to get to the truth, that it's necessary to break down the suspect's will and create a false sense of hopelessness. But the truth is, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a way to create false confessions, to ruin innocent lives, and to perpetuate a system that's designed to break people down, not to build them up.
So, what can we learn from the case of Amanda Knox? How can we prevent innocent people from falling victim to isolation and deprivation? The answer lies in education and awareness.
We need to understand the tactics that interrogators use, we need to recognize the signs of false confessions, and we need to speak out against a system that's designed to break people down.
It's not just about Amanda Knox or any other individual case. It's about the systemic problem of false confessions, the way it undermines justice, and the way it ruins lives.
It's about creating a society that values truth and justice, not just convictions and confessions. And it's about recognizing that isolation and deprivation are not tools of justice, but tools of oppression. As we continue to explore the world of interrogation psychology, we'll delve into more tactics and techniques that are used to break innocent people. We'll examine the role of mirroring and empathy, the power of social influence, and the impact of sensory deprivation.
But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the case of Amanda Knox and the lessons we can learn from it.
As we've seen, isolation and deprivation can have a profound impact on our mental state. They can make us more susceptible to false information, more prone to making mistakes, and more dependent on our interrogators.
It's a powerful tool that can be used to break innocent people, but it's not just a tool of the state. It's a tool of oppression, a way to silence people, and a way to control the narrative. So, what can we do about it? How can we prevent innocent people from falling victim to isolation and deprivation? The answer lies in education and awareness.
We need to understand the tactics that interrogators use, we need to recognize the signs of false confessions, and we need to speak out against a system that's designed to break people down.
As we move forward, let's keep the case of Amanda Knox in mind. Let's remember the lessons we've learned about isolation and deprivation, and let's use that knowledge to create a better world.
A world where truth and justice are valued above convictions and confessions. A world where innocent people are protected from the tactics of interrogation psychology.
The power of isolation and deprivation is a powerful tool that can be used to break innocent people. But it's not the only tool that interrogators use. In the next section, we'll explore the role of mirroring and empathy in interrogation psychology.
We'll examine how interrogators use these tactics to break down the suspect's will and create a false sense of hopelessness.
But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the case of Amanda Knox and the lessons we can learn from it. Let's talk about this in the comments below. What do you think about the tactics of interrogation psychology? Have you ever heard of Amanda Knox's case?
Share your thoughts and experiences with us, and let's keep the conversation going. The Reid Technique, a closer look. Imagine sitting in a cold, sterile room, with no windows to gaze out of, and no phone to call for help. You're here voluntarily, or so you think, and the interrogator is determined to get you to crack.
But what if I told you that this isn't just a scene from a movie, but a real-life scenario that's been used to extract confessions from innocent people?
Welcome to the world of the Reid Technique, a method of interrogation that's been widely criticized for its lack of scientific basis and its high risk of false confessions. The Reid Technique involves a combination of psychological manipulation, coercion, and physical pressure to extract a confession. It's a complex and nuanced art that relies on the interrogator's ability to read the subject's body language and emotions. But what might seem like a clever trick to some is actually a recipe for disaster when it comes to extracting confessions from innocent people. One of the most well-known tactics used by interrogators is the good cop, bad cop routine. You've probably seen it in movies, where one interrogator is tough and aggressive, while the other is friendly and sympathetic. But what you might not know is that this technique has been shown to be highly effective in extracting false confessions from innocent people. The good cop is designed to build trust and rapport with the subject, while the bad cop uses intimidation and fear to break them down. It's a classic example of psychological manipulation, where the interrogator uses every trick in the book to get the subject to confess.
But that's not all.
Interrogators also use a range of other tactics to break down their subjects, including the ticking clock technique. This involves telling the subject that time is running out, and that they need to confess before it's too late. It's a classic example of psychological pressure, where the interrogator uses fear and anxiety to break down the subject's resistance.
And it's not just the ticking clock that's used. Interrogators also use a range of other tactics, including isolation, deprivation, and even physical violence. But what's even more disturbing is that the Reid technique has been widely criticized for its lack of scientific basis. There's no evidence to suggest that it's an effective method of interrogation, and in fact, many experts have argued that it's a recipe for disaster. In one notable case, a man named Stephen Drizzt admitted to a crime he didn't commit after being subjected to the Reid technique. He later recanted his confession, and was eventually exonerated after DNA evidence proved his innocence. The Reid technique has also been linked to a number of high-profile cases of false confessions. In one case, a man named Michael Crow was falsely accused of murdering his sister after being subjected to the Reid technique. He was later exonerated after DNA evidence proved his innocence, but not before he had spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. So what can we learn from the Reid technique?
For one thing, it's a powerful reminder of the dangers of psychological manipulation. When interrogators use these tactics to extract confessions, they're not just getting people to talk, they're also getting them to lie. And that's a recipe for disaster, not just for the individual being interrogated, but for the entire justice system. But there's also a more sinister side to the Reid technique. When we allow interrogators to use these tactics to extract confessions, we're essentially giving them a free pass to lie, cheat, and steal. We're allowing them to break down innocent people, and to extract confessions from them through fear and coercion. And that's a recipe for disaster, not just for the individual being interrogated, but for society as a whole.
So what can we do to prevent this from happening? For one thing, we need to educate ourselves about the Reid technique and its dangers. We need to understand how it works, and how it can be used to extract false confessions. We also need to push for reforms in the way that interrogations are conducted, and for the use of more effective and humane methods of interrogation. But most importantly, we need to remember that the Reid technique is not just a method of interrogation, it's a recipe for disaster. When we allow interrogators to use these tactics to extract confessions, we're essentially giving them a free pass to lie, cheat, and steal. And that's a recipe for disaster, not just for the individual being interrogated, but for society as a whole. So the next time you see a movie or TV show that uses the Reid technique, remember that it's not just a clever plot device, it's a real-life recipe for disaster. And the next time you hear about a case of false confessions, remember that it's not just a one-off, it's a symptom of a much larger problem.
And that's the Reid technique, a method of interrogation that's been widely criticized for its lack of scientific basis and its high risk of false confessions. The case of the Central Park Five in 1989, a brutal assault took place in Central Park, leaving a young jogger, Tricia Mailey, in a coma.
5 Black and Latino teenagers, aged 14 to 16, were arrested and accused of the crime.
What followed was a series of coerced confessions, false convictions, and a miscarriage of justice that would haunt the city for years to come. Imagine being a 15-year-old kid, walking home from a friend's house on a hot summer evening, when suddenly you're stopped by the police and accused of committing a heinous crime. You're taken to a cold, sterile room and interrogated by a seasoned detective who's determined to get you to crack.
Sounds familiar?
It's a scenario that's all too common in our justice system, particularly when the Reid technique is used. The Reid Technique, developed by John Reid, is a method of interrogation that relies on creating a sense of hopelessness and despair in the accused. The interrogator uses a combination of psychological manipulation, physical discomfort, and false promises to wear down the suspect until they confess to the crime.
But what happens when this technique is used on innocent people? The Central Park 5 case is a stark reminder of the dangers of false confessions. The 5 teenagers, Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise, were subjected to hours of grueling interrogation, during which they were told that they would be released once they confessed to the crime. They were also shown evidence that had been planted by the police, including a bloody shirt that had been found in the park. But despite the overwhelming evidence against them, the teens didn't crack. Not yet. In fact, it wasn't until the 4th day of interrogation, when the teens were separated from their families and denied food and water, that they began to crack. Antron McCrae, the first to confess, was told that he would get a lighter sentence if he cooperated with the police. Kevin Richardson, the next to confess, was promised a full pardon if he came clean. The other 3 teens followed suit, each one convinced that they would be released once they confessed to the crime. But the confessions were false. The teens didn't commit the crime, and the evidence against them was circumstantial at best. It wouldn't be until years later, in 2002, that the real perpetrator, Matias Reyes, would confess to the crime. Reyes, a serial rapist who had been on the loose for years, had been in the same jail as one of the teens and had bragged about committing the crime. The Central Park 5 case is a stark reminder of the dangers of false confessions and the importance of protecting the rights of the accused. It's a case that highlights the flaws of the Reid technique and the need for evidence-based interrogation methods. As we continue to explore the world of interrogation psychology, it's essential that we remember the lessons of the Central Park 5. Their story is a powerful reminder that false confessions can happen to anyone, regardless of their background or circumstances. It's a story that highlights the importance of due process and the need for evidence-based justice. And it's a story that serves as a warning to us all, reminding us of the dangers of false confessions and the importance of protecting the rights of the accused. In the next section, we'll explore the consequences of false confessions and the impact they have on the accused, their families, and society as a whole. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the case of the Central Park 5. A case that serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of false confessions and the importance of protecting the rights of the accused. Human memory is often considered a reliable source of information, but the truth is, it's remarkably malleable. Under stress, pressure, or even the right suggestion, our memories can be manipulated, distorted, and even fabricated. This phenomenon is known as false memory, and it's a crucial concept in understanding how innocent people can be broken by interrogation psychology. Imagine a scenario where a person is asked to recall a traumatic event from their past. At first, they might remember it vividly, but as they're pressed for more details, their memory begins to blur. They might start to embellish or even invent events that never occurred. This is because our brains are wired to fill in gaps and create a coherent narrative, even if it's not entirely accurate. The problem is, these false memories can be incredibly convincing. They can feel just as real as true memories, and they can be used to extract false confessions from suspects. Interrogators often take advantage of this by using techniques like the Reid technique, which we discussed in previous sections. By creating a sense of urgency and using psychological manipulation, they can make suspects believe they've committed a crime they didn't. One infamous case that illustrates this phenomenon is the Lost in the Mall study. In the 1990s, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus conducted an experiment where she asked participants to watch a short video of a man being attacked in a shopping mall. Then, she asked them to recall the details of the event. Some participants were also given a few suggestions about what they might have seen, such as a red car or a blue shirt. The results were astonishing. Many participants began to recall these suggested details as if they were true, even though they hadn't actually seen them. This study highlights the ease with which our memories can be manipulated. Interrogators often use similar techniques to create false memories in suspects. By planting seeds of doubt or suggesting alternative explanations, they can make suspects question their own memories and eventually confess to a crime they didn't commit. The consequences of false memories are devastating.
In the United States alone, it's estimated that thousands of people have been wrongly convicted of crimes due to coerced confessions. These individuals often spend years, even decades, in prison before their convictions are eventually overturned. As we continue to explore the dark side of interrogation psychology, it's essential to remember that human memory is a fragile and malleable thing. By understanding how our memories can be manipulated, we can begin to appreciate the gravity of false confessions and the devastating consequences they can bring.
But what about the interrogators themselves? How do they justify using techniques that can lead to false confessions?
In the next section, we'll delve into the world of interrogation psychology and explore the motivations and tactics of those who use these techniques to break suspects. For now, let's take a moment to reflect on the human cost of false memories. Think about the countless people who have been wrongly accused, convicted, and imprisoned due to coerced confessions. Their stories are a sobering reminder of the dangers of interrogation psychology and the importance of protecting our rights and our memories.
As we move forward, I want to leave you with a question: how can we ensure that our memories remain true and untainted by suggestion or coercion? What can we do to protect ourselves from the manipulations of interrogators and the distortions of our own brains? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
As we continue to explore this complex and unsettling topic, remember that the truth is often hidden behind a veil of suggestion and manipulation. But with awareness, education, and a commitment to justice, we can work towards a world where false memories are a thing of the past. The role of technology in interrogation: imagine being hooked up to a machine that claims to detect lies. A device that supposedly measures your heart rate, skin conductivity, and other physiological responses to determine your guilt or innocence. This sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's a reality in many police stations today. Polygraph machines, or lie detectors, have been used in interrogations for decades. They're often touted as a foolproof way to get to the truth, but the reality is far more complicated. These machines can be easily manipulated, and their results are often unreliable. In fact, studies have shown that polygraph tests can be influenced by a range of factors, including stress, anxiety, and even the examiner's own biases.
But that's not all.
Modern technology has given rise to a new generation of interrogation tools, including brain-computer interfaces and advanced behavioral analysis software.
These tools promise to help investigators identify suspects and extract confessions more efficiently.
However, they also raise serious concerns about the reliability of confessions and the potential for wrongful convictions. Take, for example, the case of James Sensor, a Minnesota man who was convicted of vehicular manslaughter after his car struck and killed a pedestrian. During his interrogation, Sensor was hooked up to a polygraph machine and subjected to intense questioning. The machine allegedly detected deception, and Sensor eventually confessed to the crime. However, it later emerged that the machine had been malfunctioning, and Sensor's confession was likely coerced. This raises a crucial question: what happens when we combine advanced technology with high-pressure interrogation techniques? Do we get to the truth, or do we create false confessions that can ruin lives? The answer is far from clear. In fact, many experts argue that these tools are being used to create false narratives, rather than to uncover the facts. Consider the case of Brian Dugan, a man who was convicted of murder in the 1980s. During his interrogation, Dugan was subjected to a series of psychological tests designed to detect deception. The results allegedly showed that he was lying, and Dugan eventually confessed to the crime. However, it later emerged that the tests had been manipulated, and Dugan's confession was likely coerced. These cases highlight the dangers of relying too heavily on technology in interrogations. While these tools may seem convincing, they're often based on flawed assumptions and incomplete data. The reality is that human psychology is far more complex than any machine can ever hope to measure. And when we combine advanced technology with high-pressure interrogation techniques, we risk creating false confessions that can have devastating consequences. So what's the solution? Perhaps it's time to rethink our approach to interrogation and focus on building trust and rapport with suspects, rather than relying on machines to extract confessions. After all, the goal of interrogation is to uncover the truth, not to create false narratives that can ruin lives. As we continue to explore the role of technology in interrogation,
we must be mindful of the potential risks and consequences. The stakes are high, and the outcome is far from certain. The impact on innocent people. You're about to hear a story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the justice system. Meet John, a 35-year-old husband and father of two. He was accused of murdering his business partner, a crime he swore he didn't commit. At first, the police were convinced of his guilt. They subjected John to hours of interrogation, using every trick in the book to break him. They lied to him, manipulated him, and even threatened to take away his family. The pressure was intense, and John soon found himself cracking under the weight of it all. He confessed to the crime, but it was a false confession. He had been coerced into saying what they wanted to hear. The evidence against him was circumstantial at best, but the police were convinced they had their man. John's life was forever changed after that day. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. His family was torn apart, and his children grew up without a father. But the real tragedy was the psychological damage that John suffered. Years of interrogation and false accusations had taken a toll on his mental health. He developed anxiety, depression, and PTSD. He struggled to sleep at night, haunted by the memories of his time in prison. His relationships with his family were strained, and he became isolated and withdrawn. John's story is not unique. There are countless others like him, innocent people who have been broken by the very system that's supposed to protect them. The consequences of false confessions can be devastating, resulting in wrongful convictions and ruined lives. The experience of being interrogated can be a traumatic one. The feeling of being trapped, the pressure to confess, and the fear of what might happen next can be overwhelming. It's a psychological game, and often, the innocent are the ones who get caught in the crossfire. But what's even more disturbing is the fact that this can happen to anyone. Innocent people, like John, are being broken by the system every day. And it's not just the accused who suffer, it's their families, their friends, and their communities. The impact on innocent people is a story that needs to be told. It's a story of broken lives, shattered dreams, and the devastating consequences of false confessions. It's a story that should leave you questioning the justice system and the methods used to extract confessions. As we continue to explore the world of interrogation psychology, it's essential to remember that the innocent are often the ones who get caught in the crossfire. Their stories are a reminder of the dangers of false confessions and the importance of protecting the rights of the accused. In the next section, we'll delve deeper into the world of false confessions and the consequences that follow. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on John's story and the impact it had on his life. His story is a powerful reminder of the need for reform and the importance of protecting the rights of the accused. As we delve deeper into the world of interrogation psychology, it's clear that the current system is flawed. Innocent people like John, who we met in the previous section, have been broken by interrogation techniques that prioritize conviction rates over the accuracy of confessions. It's time to rethink the way we approach interrogation, and that starts with revising our methods to prioritize the truth. The current system is built around a flawed assumption that anyone who confesses must be guilty. But what about the people who confess to crimes they didn't commit? What about the innocent individuals who are coerced into making false confessions? It's estimated that up to 25% of wrongful convictions in the U.S. can be attributed to false confessions. That's a staggering number, and it's a wake-up call for law enforcement agencies to take a closer look at their interrogation techniques. One of the most significant problems is the use of leading questions and suggestive language during interrogations. These tactics can be incredibly effective at eliciting false confessions, as they create a sense of doubt and uncertainty in the accused. For example, a detective might ask a suspect, "Don't you think it's suspicious that you were in the area around the time of the crime?" This type of question is designed to plant a seed of doubt in the suspect's mind, making them more likely to confess to a crime they didn't commit. But it's not just the language used during interrogations that's the problem, it's also the environment. Interrogation rooms are often designed to be intimidating and disorienting, with harsh lighting and uncomfortable seating. This can make suspects feel vulnerable and disarmed, making them more susceptible to suggestion and manipulation. It's a powerful tool for law enforcement, but it's also a recipe for disaster.
It's time for police and law enforcement agencies to be trained in evidence-based interrogation methods that prioritize the accuracy of confessions and the protection of the accused. This means using techniques that are grounded in science and research, rather than relying on outdated and discredited methods. It also means being transparent and accountable, with clear protocols in place for handling confessions and ensuring that the accused has access to proper representation. The use of technology in interrogation is another area that needs to be carefully regulated. While tools like polygraph machines and brain scanners may seem like useful tools for detecting lies, they're often unreliable and can create false memories in confessions. It's estimated that up to 90% of polygraph results are false positives, meaning that innocent people are being misidentified as guilty.
This is a serious issue that needs to be addressed, and it requires a more nuanced and thoughtful approach to the use of technology in interrogation. As we move forward, it's essential that we prioritize the truth and the protection of the accused. This means revising our interrogation techniques, training law enforcement agencies in evidence-based methods, and carefully regulating the use of technology. It's a complex issue, but it's one that requires our attention and our action.
By working together, we can create a system that prioritizes justice and protects the innocent. As we near the end of this story, it's clear that the Reid technique and other interrogation methods have been widely criticized for their flaws and the risk of false confessions. Innocent people like John, who we met earlier, have been broken by these tactics, which prioritize conviction rates over the accuracy of confessions. But why do innocent people fall prey to psychological manipulation and coercion during interrogation? It's because they're often in a state of heightened emotional vulnerability. They've been subjected to lengthy questioning, sometimes for hours or even days, without access to a lawyer or a break. Their minds are racing, and they're desperate to please the interrogators, often at the expense of their own self-preservation. One of the most disturbing aspects of this is that interrogators often exploit this vulnerability, using tactics like good cop/bad cop or emotional manipulation to extract false confessions. These confessions are then used as evidence against the accused, often leading to wrongful convictions. It's a ticking time bomb that's been waiting to explode, and it's time for us to take action. So what's the solution? It's time for a new approach to interrogation that prioritizes the accuracy of confessions and the protection of the accused. This means implementing safeguards like video and audio recordings of interrogations, as well as providing access to independent observers and lawyers for the accused. But it's not just about implementing new policies, it's about shifting our cultural mindset around interrogation. We need to recognize that innocent people are just as capable of being broken by these tactics as guilty ones. We need to acknowledge that psychological manipulation and coercion are not acceptable methods for extracting confessions. As we look to the future, let's work towards creating a justice system that prioritizes truth and accuracy over conviction rates. Let's give innocent people the protection they deserve, and let's ensure that those who are guilty are brought to justice in a fair and just manner. It's time for a new approach, and it's time for change. What do you think is the most critical step we can take to reform the interrogation system? Share your thoughts in the comments below.